we have assets and liabilities. We have fixed assets.
I've heard that.
And we have tangible and we have non-tangible assets. Your portfolio is very skewed towards non-tangible assets.
Yes.
Which are harder to value than tangible assets.
Yes.
Why are you so skewed towards non-tangible assets? And what is it that's so unique about them?
Yeah. Tangible assets are things like this building that we're in, or a plant, or a shop, or a vehicle, or some equipment, and so on. And it's literally something you can touch. Physical. It's tangible. And it's got some interesting characteristics. One of them is they're relatively easy to replicate with money. Just go out there. And not only that, you can usually borrow the money to replicate it. So if you want to build another shopping center or buy another fleet of vehicles or build some factory equipment, usually your bank will look at its tangible value and feel comforted by that. Rather stupidly, in my view, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I was in banking myself. It's what they should really call it is pawnbroking. Then we'd all understand it a lot better. Like, oh, well, I've got a valuation that says it's worth that. I'll lend you that against it. So you can borrow quite a lot of money to finance your investment in those assets, which makes them easy to replicate. And not only that, the very fact that you can borrow money drives the expected return down towards the cost of debt. Because if there's an investment in a property that's available on the market, and if we can all borrow lots of money against it, in bidding for the property, we'll accept a lower return the more debt we can put in there. Yeah. Once you get to intangibles, though, they're pretty difficult to replicate, right? Because you need real equity for a start. You can't easily do it with debt. You go along to your bank and say, I've got this idea for a software program. I'd like to borrow a lot of money. And it's a very short meeting, basically. Very short meeting. Secondly, they do give you advantages which are difficult to get around. Brands are an intangible which are difficult to get around. We are creatures of habit, and we typically gravitate towards buying brands, and we pay a bit more for brands than we do for unbranded goods, and we pay a bit more for leading brands than we do for secondary or tertiary brands. And it's also usually a combination of factors. Brands, control of distribution, that's an intangible advantage. You and I sit here, and instead of having this interview, which is obviously wonderful and fascinating, we devise a new vodka, and we then got to try and get it to market, haven't we? How? Because the distribution is controlled by our competitors, right? It's very difficult, very difficult. Know-how, installed bases of equipment. If we're in the business of installing lifts or veterinary testing equipment or mass spectrometry equipment for analyzing drugs and food, we've got to attain market to sell things into people. Yeah, it's a physical asset, but it's got an intangible value in terms of having a client base which is pretty tame and secure and locked into it over time. The other thing is properly maintained intangibles can last forever. In terms of valuing companies, one of the commonest mistakes that's not discussed much is time. So one of my trick questions for people is always, we buy an asset, I don't know what it is, a cement mixer, right? And we pay 100 and the return every year is 20. Is that a good or a bad investment?
Well, over time, it turns into a very good investment.
How long does it last is the question you've got to ask. Because if it lasts 4 years, it's a really lousy investment. If it lasts 20 years, it's a really good investment. Good. And it's the same with assets. And one of the things about intangibles is they have a very long life. So if you've got a business with an intangible making very high returns, it might go on forever. Right? So, we look at intangibles out there like brands and say, how long has it been in existence? Well, for more than 100 years, Colgate was paying a dividend when Queen Victoria was on the throne, paying a dividend.